Welcome to Cyclone InCYders. I'm Taylor Mankle along with Hawn Wong. The pros are here. Sit back, relax. We're going to talk some Cyclone sports. We're going to go through basically the entire year because it is our last episode here for Cyclone InCYders this season. Potentially for our careers, good friend.
Yeah, getting down to the end of the year here.
Exactly right. So we're going to go back. We're going to look at all of the different sports, highlight some of them, including football, volleyball, men's basketball, women's basketball, wrestling, gymnastics, soccer, softball, men's golf. So much is going to happen. So much is going to happen in this short time
Strap in
with us. Yeah, let's strap in and let's go some Iowa State football to start off our talk. So obviously, we had a lot going on this season as it was Matt Campbell's first season. When he came into the program, Hon, what were your thoughts of Campbell coming in?
Well, initial reaction to Matt Campbell, kind of looking at his career at Toledo, I was really impressed with a few things. First off, the running game for Toledo, historically, not even before Campbell even got there, really good program offensively, and I thought that would translate really well into Iowa State, coming off Mike Warren's historically good freshman year as a runner. Coming into this year, though, Matt Campbell, he did bring this mentality, this eagerness, kind of this winning, like I said, mentality for Iowa State. The storms are brewing, kind of ego for the team. Yeah. And what really caught my eye with Matt Campbell is his coaching abilities in game to adapt to kind of the situations going on. We'll talk about it a little later, the whole quarterback situation, flip-flopping between those two. Like I said, the Mike Warren situation at running back, how he was able to balance Nwangu coming in, Montgomery coming in, all three of those runners having their own kind of effective styles. So Matt Campbell's ability to kind of adapt mid-season, in-game with injuries and stuff. It was really fun to see, and I'm excited for his kind of second sophomore season.
Yeah, for sure. He's a very, young energy, and he's really brought a lot of hype to this program. That's one thing he's brought a lot. Of course, as you mentioned, the Storms of Brewing mantra that they had. Now they went to trust the process, is still on that. Now raise the standard as this year. There's a lot that Matt Campbell's trying to bring to the table for this Iowa State Cyclone football team, trying to raise the excellence of a program that hasn't seen much of it in its history. So it's really exciting to see what he's bringing to the table. But to highlight some things in season number one, obviously not the best season, not a winning season, but he had a lot to adjust to in Big 12 countries. So one of the biggest things across the year, we talked about it many times on this program, Hon, the quarterback controversy. Joel Lanning, Jacob Park. Obviously, now it's a totally different thing. Joel Lanning's going to be playing linebacker. But regardless, what did you think during the season of this back and forth, Joel Lanning versus Jacob Park, and a lot of both?
Well, with the whole back and forth situation, going into it, I understand why it was happening. You were trying to establish a new quarterback coming in Jacob Park, who potentially down the line could have been your starter for successful seasons. But you had a quarterback that was confident enough in Joel Lanning to make plays down the field. He had the athleticism to run this sort of spread offense. Yeah. And just going into it, Lanning didn't start the season terribly. It wasn't necessarily a good season. Although they went 0-3, his statistical start to the season, it could have improved, And so that's kind of why we saw, Jacob Park come in that fourth game, that San Jose State game, first win of the season, and it showed a lot of the potential that Jacob Park brought to the game, and that's really why after that fourth game, you saw kind of the contrasting Jacob Park's few possessions, Joel Lanning few possessions, and you got to see what it could kind of turn into. But I did appreciate the switch to kind of full-time Jacob Park towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think we understand that, as you're mentioning, why that was happening, because there was so much transition, both with Joel Lanning coming in as a starter. That was huge for him to continue starting. He had the trust of the team. He had the C on his chest. He's a captain for that squad. But additionally, you had Jacob Park coming in. He was new to the system. He had to adjust a lot. And that was an important process for him while not just going 100% in right away, first night under the lights in Jack Trice Stadium, having him as the starter. Now he has the system. He saw a lot of time towards the back half of last season. Now he's got that nod as of right now, considering anybody else comes and beats him out in the rest of spring camp or fall camp.
Maybe some Zeb Nolan in there?
Maybe some Zeb Nolan if he gets fully recovered, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But another big thing that happened this season, and Matt Campbell was able to get a big win. It wasn't against like a big player as like an Oklahoma or a TCU or a Texas or anybody like that, but it was a big win.
Big win.
A lot of points on the board at Jack Trice Stadium gave the fans something to be excited about against Texas Tech. What was your big takeaway from that performance?
I mean, 66 points. That's a men's basketball score sometimes. 66 points is a lot of points for our team to put up, especially at that point in the season when they were looking at, 3 wins at that point? 3 wins. And so one thing that I did bring out of this Texas Tech win was we talked about it, Joel Lanning's performance, and it shows an example of why transferring into a linebacker, his qualities and skills that will be best to transfer. Joel Lanning rushing for 171 yards on 5 touchdowns, a record-setting day for a quarterback in Iowa State history. That kind of leadership and that kind of bullheaded attitude, that's kind of what you want in a linebacker. So this game showed a lot of promise in terms of Joel Lanning's next season and Jacob Park's season as a quarterback. But Matt Campbell's ability to put points on the board as an offensive coach.
Yeah, and Matt has been really vocal throughout his time here in creating a winning attitude. And it's important for a team to realize what it feels like to win in the Big 12. There's a big conference, so having that available is also, I think, a very important step in what they may have taken against Texas Tech, and we'll see if they can translate it into this year. A big part of this year is the recruiting class. Best recruiting class in Iowa State football history, and they're trying to work on the next following year right now, but talk about what your biggest takeaway from this incoming recruiting class is.
Yeah, well, Taylor, I would have liked to see a lot of help on the offensive side with Iowa State's offensive line especially. A lot of question marks there. We do have a returning starter, but with the incoming recruiting class, there wasn't a lot of help on the offensive side. Defensively, however, I'm really excited to see what they can do. Matt Leo coming in as a 6'7" defensive end. He's going to allow a lot of linebackers to move around with his side. Rugby. I thought you said rugged. Either way,
both.
Both. Definitely both. And alongside that, Camilo Tongamoa.
Something like that.
New name I've heard just recently. But looked up some of his tapes, saw his Twitter. One of his first pinned tweets was just some of his plays in high school. And that guy's just a big body for Iowa State and for Matt Campbell to really use to just clog up the middle as a defensive tackle. So a lot of these bodies coming in on the defensive side can really help Iowa State win some games down the line next year. Yeah, winning in the trenches, that'll be huge. We'll see what the future recruiting classes show, but obviously a great place to start with your best recruiting class in Iowa State football history. Props to Matt Campbell for that.
Props for that. Really. Props for that. It's not easy to get players to come to Ames, Iowa to play football. Best of luck to him in the future. We'll see what this upcoming year has in store. I've asked you before just to see if your mind has changed, Hawn. Going into this season, you know what's coming. I'm going to ask you this again.
Go for it.
How many wins does this Cyclone team get, and which wins are those? I've got the schedule pulled up if you need to see it, but just to run through it for anyone watching out there that doesn't know, we've got UNI starting at home, then they host Iowa at home, then you travel to Akron, host Texas, at Oklahoma, home versus Kansas, at Texas Tech, home versus TCU for homecoming, at West Virginia, home versus Oklahoma State, then finish off the season at Baylor and at Kansas State. How many wins do you have Iowa State getting, and what wins are those?
Well, Taylor, I do see improvement, and I was talking to my roommate a little bit earlier about the season coming up. I do see an in-state sweep between UNI and Iowa. So a hot take for next year.
Hot take.
Cy-Hawk game goes to the Cyclones. Heard it from Hawn Wong. I just felt
Cyclones start off 2-0.
Yeah, start out 2-0. I feel like Matt Campbell really didn't want to lose that UNI game in the first game of his first Iowa State coaching career. So he's going to go into that game really strong, carry the momentum over to Iowa, and so on. 2-0 start. But I do see improvement along the season, improving from, I think, the 5 wins. 4 wins? 3 wins. Oh. Okay, well, I'm going to improve it to at least 5 wins. I feel like with Kansas on the schedule, Texas Tech losing the quarterback.
Yeah, that's going to be tough for them. Yeah. It's going to be a tough season.
I mean, Oklahoma's going to be rough. The West Virginia, again, is going to be rough.
Yeah.
Texas, Chuck Strong,
Charlie Strong's out, Tom Herman in.
I'm saying Tom Herman. Yeah. You never know with a new coach, so that's going to be a rough game. But I do see improvement.
Okay. Improvement around 5 wins for our expert in Cyclone Insider, Hawn Wong. So let's move on to another sport. Sick transition right there. We're going to jump to some volleyball. They had a very good season for their campaign here this last year. NCAA tournament bound. They really came back during that season, were able to bounce back. Had some struggles earlier on in the season, were able to get things under control in Big 12 play, solidify their chance as an NCAA tournament team. And I think one of the biggest points of last year was that turnaround, Hawn. Talk a little bit about that turnaround that they had.
Yeah, well, starting season 1-5, Coach Lynch understood we can't, expect to make the tournament starting 1-4, 1-5, and going on the 8-1 run at the end of the season really helped. To start that turnaround back mid-season, you talked about earlier in the season their switch to the 6-2 system to allow for the offense to kind of be a little more free-flowing. Yeah. I think really changed things for the Cyclones. That just kind of goes along with Coach Lynch's style to engage her players to make the difference in the season, and I think that really showed.
No, for sure, it definitely did, and the adjustments made by the players were fantastic. Yeah. And what's probably even more exciting than last season for the Cyclone volleyball team, they have a lot returning on, a lot coming back for this team.
Yeah, it'll be really fun to watch. Haley Hillegas as the lead girl. I think she has one of the best chances to be one of the best in the Big 12. Coming off her experience from this season alone. Not only that, but Jess Shaven coming back, Grace Lazard. They'll be in the middle, clogging things up, both on the offensive side, blocking the ball, defensive side, putting in the spikes, and with the rest of the returners and the experience, I expect a lot from this Cyclone team.
Yeah, and as many should expect a lot from this team. As you mentioned, some of the big ones, you got an All-American returning in Jess Shaven. You got Samara West coming back to be a good on the outside block, as we saw her change from middle block to the outside. You still have Alexis Conaway coming in on the outside. You've got, as you mentioned, Grace Lazard. She'll be big. Another new setter, Piper Mock, coming from Des Moines Roosevelt, a very high recruit coming out of Des Moines. Watch out for her. Not sure if she's going to start at the beginning of the season. I think that's Monique Harris's job to lose, but she is a big body at setter, and that's something that Monique Harris lacks in the setting position. Is she's very small, but she can get up there at 5'9". Piper comes in at 6'1", sometimes listed at 6'2". That'll be a huge add if Iowa State can mold her into a great setter for the future.
Yeah, and not only that, but Piper's decision to graduate early from I think Roosevelt, to come in and work with the coaching staff was, and that just takes on a leadership role alone, being one of the first freshmen to enter the Cyclone Athletics. So for her to get in early, work with the coaches for the next upcoming season is going to be huge for her. And I think we're going to see that come the later games of the season, that kind of experience show.
No, I totally agree. And they're in spring matches right now. They won 7 of 8 sets as they hosted a tournament over the weekend. You can check out the full box scores on cyclones.com. But volleyball season around the corner coming up next year. A lot of expectations for that team. Should be great to watch. Now moving on, we've got another team that had some turbulent times over the offseason, but were able to adjust. That's the men's basketball team, and I think that's one of the biggest stories of this year. You lost a lot. Obviously, you lost George Niang, Han, and that's a huge thing. Everybody was bringing it up through the year. Can they handle it without George Niang? Did they?
That's a good question, because if you look at the first half of the season and you ask that question, it's hard to answer, because Monte Moore's production was, although it was up, it wasn't as improved as many people would think with the departure of Niang. But if you look at the second half of the season, that's when they really turned things around.
Flip that switch.
And talking about what they lost last season, just in terms of numbers, Niang put up 21 points, I think 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Jamal McKay, 12 points, around 7 rebounds. even Abdel Nader putting up 12 points himself, rebounds and assists. In terms of numbers, you're losing all that.
It's a lot.
But in game presence, George Niang might have been one of the biggest presences in college basketball last year, just in terms of what he's allowed to do for his team, what he's allowed to create for his team. So in that aspect, Iowa State lost a ton. But if we talked about the improvements of the seniors this year later on, they really held their own and allowed them to carry that on to the postseason.
Yeah, and let's go on into that. I mean, even with losing so much in production, Iowa State was one of the most, I don't want to say it, experienced teams across the NCAA field with Nazmi Trulong, Monte Morris, Matt Thomas, Deontay Burton, among a couple other seniors coming in, transferring, and Merle Holden and Daryl Bowie. You had a lot of experience on this team, and I think that showed winning the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, it was actually Matt Thomas's, Monte Morris, and Naz Long's third out of 4 seasons, and that's incredible senior staff for those guys, winning 3 out of 4 Big 12 tournament, especially in the era of Bill Self, of all things, and his dominance during the regular season. But that I think the experience that Monte Morris and Matt Thomas learned from George Niang in their freshman and sophomore seasons, even junior, it really led up to their experience into this season, being kind of the front runners in the Big 12 tournament in terms of, like you said, game time experience in postseason play. So in winning the Big 12 tournament, they put that on the back of Monte Morris and the seniors.
No, absolutely, and obviously making the NCAA tournament, going to round 2, losing to Purdue. But new year, Iowa State again losing a lot, quite a bit. What are your expectations, Hawn, for this next year? Obviously got a couple big recruits coming in. There's a lot of JUCOs and a lot of grad transfers right now circling around Ames, Iowa, checking out Iowa State and Steve Prohm's squad. What are your expectations? Is this a tournament team next year?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to have to think that. Donovan Jackson will have to take on the reins for the Cyclone offense. And although he had really good numbers as a freshman as the Cyclone, I think that was kind of amplified by the production of Monte Morris, the shooting around him by Matt Thomas and Naz Long. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to provide that kind of offensive spark by himself. But another big name coming from this past season is Solomon Young. And his defensive presence for the Cyclones was really big. So alongside those two, I think just the incoming group of people for Iowa State is going to have to show, what they can produce for Steve Prohm. One named Linda Wigington. I saw him play on ESPN2. I think it was the World versus USA match on ESPN2. Looked really fluid as a point guard. As a combo guard, actually, I think he has the ability to take on both roles, and that should really help improve the offense for Iowa State, losing so much of that shooting. But like you did say earlier with the recruits floating around, I think Iowa State has a good shot to pick up still some more talent, obviously, because if you look at the JUCO transfers, if you look at the people who have come into this Iowa State program in the past years, they've really made their own mark.
Flourished,
Abdel Nader, Deontay Burton, Jamil McKay, Bryce Deshaun Jones, DeAndre Kane, oh my God, Royce White. Give me more, please. It was really fun to watch these past 4 years, and still, as a Cyclone fan, even though we won't be here, I'll be watching.
Of course.
I'm really excited to see what these guys can do.
No, it's going to be an interesting season. You're finally going to see a full season as Steve Prohm's coaching. I think we saw that towards the back half of the year when Steve Prohm kind of took the reins and to say, you know what, this is my team now. I let Monte, Naz, Deontay, and Matt kind of take it for the front half of the season. This is my team now. You saw more defense implemented. This may be a more defensive team than we've seen in a long time here at Iowa State this upcoming season. Wigington's going to be huge. He's going to be at the point. I think you got to look out for Nick Weiler-Babb. If he gets confidence behind himself, he could be the leading scorer and potentially MVP for next year's season for Iowa State basketball. That is a hot take. That's a hot take, but Steve Prohm loves him. His teammates love him. They think he has potential to be one of the best Cyclones to ever put on the jersey. That's coming from their mouths. So you got to look out for Nick Weiler-Babb. If he can get that confidence that everybody else has in him within himself, look out for Weiler-Babb. Now let's switch over to the women's basketball side of things. They had low expectations going into this year. Obviously, coming off a real rough year, but they did have a decent amount returning. You had Shauna Johnson, you had Jada Buckley, you had Bridget Carlton. The big three were coming back, and they did not play well to start the season. That's how it was, and it was kind of similar to Iowa State men's basketball. Started off kind of slow, but they hit a switch. Bill Fenley and staff got them playing extraordinary, so well that they beat the number 5 team on the road, had a whole season turnaround, and made the NCAA tournament. What were your thoughts on the women's basketball team season as a whole, Hawn?
Well, Shauna Johnson coming into the season as an all Big 12 player, I thought she was going to emerge as the top scorer, possibly the top rebounding with her, just her activity around the court, possibly one of the top rebounders for the team. And while she didn't disappoint, it was actually Bridget Carlton who made an emergence as Iowa State's top player. I think earning her spot as a unanimous pick in the top all Big 12 selection was perfect for her in terms of what she was able to provide for Iowa State this season. And really, one of the things that helped Iowa State turn the season around, I think, was Emily Durr's improved minutes at her ability as a shooter outside, helping everyone else just spread the floor was really what helped turn the season around.
I totally agree. Emily Durr's turnaround was huge for Iowa State. There were a lot of different cogs, and the defense really helped as that was improving throughout the season. It was definitely an interesting season for women's basketball. And they've got a new year, new recruits coming in, some exciting recruits, couple really big ones, even recently, as they added Kennedy Hopate, a 2017 JUCO. This was just a couple days ago. She'll be a new big for Iowa State, which will be much needed. This big will actually potentially, if she can get ready for Big 12 play, she could play that 5, and then they would move Meredith Burkall to the 4, her natural position, which giving Iowa State some more size, which they've lacked for the last 3 to 4 years. That could be a big get for Iowa State. It'll be interesting to see what they do now without Shauna Johnson, without Jada Buckley, without TT Starks, without Heather Bovey. That'll be interesting to see where they come up there, but some good recruits coming in for Iowa State women's basketball, some freshmen that are going to play some huge minutes. Watch out for the team next year, see if they can get back to the NCAA tournament. Now, moving past that, Iowa State wrestling. This one we're not going to take too long on because, frankly, it was one of the worst seasons in wrestling history. That's just kind of how it was. It was struggling as Iowa State was still trying to turn around with some new classes coming in. They weren't really working out. So Jamie Pollard made a change. Wrestling made a change at the end of the season. New head coach, Kevin Dresser, and frankly, it's probably the best person you could have got out there. He came in probably the most qualified for the position.
Yeah, and not only that, but adding former Hawkeyes alongside him with the coaching staff was a big get for a team that finished 57th in the national wrestling tournament this year. 1 point in that whole tournament, and although we sent 3, 1 point isn't where Iowa State wants to be in the standings, and so I think that's why this get at head coach is a big move. And I have a question for you. Being Kevin Dresser, being a former Hawkeye champion at that though, and with the coaching staff, do you have any problems with that? Any questions arise from it?
Well,
or are you just excited as the prospect of that head coach?
It's more exciting for me because in wrestling, especially in the state of Iowa, between Iowa State and Iowa, there's so much crisscrossing. I mean, you look at some of the greatest wrestlers in this state. Dan Gable at the top of that list. Wrestled at Iowa State, was an extremely good coach at Iowa. That's kind of where this crisscross is at right now. I think you just know that excellence, it does many times start at Iowa. So you have to respect that. Obviously, Dresser respects that. But I like how Dresser he's definitely removed himself from that university quite a bit, especially when he went to Virginia Tech. He took some jabs at the Iowa wrestling program. So he's for sure not much of a Hawkeye affiliated anymore, just more of a graduate or former coach of there at a great university for wrestling.
And I think regardless of the school comparisons, the head-to-head matchups, I think he's just excited to get in the coaching room and coach this team because he knows, although he didn't see although Iowa State didn't see the success they did, that they wanted to, I think Kevin Dresser sees the potential, and he will move this team forward.
Yeah, hopefully he gets Iowa State back to a great place, as we all hope they do here as well. Now, a couple more headlines. We're just going to touch on some headlines from the rest of the year before we close out today. A big one, gymnastics. They had a good season. Iowa State went undefeated at home as a gymnastics team, They also were able to compete at regionals as a team, which had not happened in a couple years for the Cyclone gymnastics team. That was a big get. And then, of course, topping it off, cherry on the top, Haley Young, the leader for that team, went on to nationals, competed at nationals at the all-around. Very exciting for her. That was an extremely good thing for this university, for this gymnastics program. And an even better thing, after a fantastic year, they lose no one. 0 seniors on that squad. Everybody's coming back. Everybody's getting better over the offseason. A lot to look out for Cyclone gymnastics. Iowa State soccer. They were able to beat some ranked opponents this year. Tony Minata still continuing to churn out better season year in and year out. Iowa State had a good one, especially for Iowa State soccer standards. Not necessarily a very historically great university in soccer aspects. So Tony Minata continues to grow and continue to mold this very young team into a competitor. Many thought that they were snubbed for the NCAA tournament, so we'll see what Tony Minata and company can do this year, this season. Softball, that one's still going underway right now. Their first Big 12 win and home win under the Jamie Traxel era after getting her as new head coach for this season. That was on Saturday. Traveled to Iowa City today to face off against the Hawkeyes. Were not able to pull that one off. Lost there in Iowa City 2-1, a very close game. Came down to a couple of the last innings. Then last but not least, men's golf and women's golf both preparing for Big 12 championships. Men's golf, Nick Vogt reeled in a W the last weekend at the Hawkeye Invitational. He is now tied for most individual wins, tournament wins, with Scott Fernandez in Iowa State history. Shout out to Nick Vogt. The team also has 4 tournament wins on this season, which is also tied for a school record. So this season could be huge for Iowa State men's golf and women's golf. They're right up there near the cusp of the top 25 in the nation. So a lot to look out for the Big 12 tournaments, or championships, I should say, coming up. Now that's all we have time for here on Cyclone InCYders. Want to thank everybody who's been a part of Cyclone InCYders throughout this season. It's been a good one, and we've talked a lot of Cyclone sports. Hawn, I want to thank you for being on for this last show. Obviously a great host himself in his day, and of course glad to be able to host a couple episodes myself. So for all of our fantastic crew here for the ISU TV sports team and ISU TV crew overall, I'm Taylor Mankle, wishing you a peaceful good night.